Sony buying Warframe?
And a new Uncharted?
Hello and welcome to Triangle Square, the PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, as always, your other host, Mr.
Saul Bridges, bringing you guys Lucky Episode 170. For those interested, stick around to the end of the show where you can find us and find more of us. But let's get into the show normally. Brett, what have you been playing this week?
I just have to say that last week you did not say Lucky 169.
Listen, I probably did.
But it's okay. Now, I had a few people, message on different things and be like, Saul didn't say Lucky 169. And I was like, oh, okay. We messed up our long-running tradition. But
for the second time, I think.
Going back into what I've been playing, I've actually played quite a lot this week. So I restarted, I should say. I got back into finishing up Life is Strange Part 2.
Okay.
Or whatever you want to call that, Part 2. God, The Last of Us. Life is Strange 2. It's not Part 2. But the fourth, I finished the third episode and started the fourth. I played so much more RuneScape because I have a problem, and I always have, and I know that I shouldn't play it because it creates problems, but for now, it's a problem I can manage. And let's see, I played Vita while I was watching some How I Met Your Mother. Decided to rewatch that and flying through it. So I've been playing a couple of those Ratalaika games that I had given to me for free. Shout out to Who You Are, you know who you are. And surprisingly, I'd mentioned before whenever I was kind of playing them, I just decided to pick Vita back up. A lot of them are really fun games. They do happen to be easy platinums, and a couple of them I will not platinum because I just didn't enjoy the game. But so far, I've gotten 2 more platinums this week. One was from Gravity Duck, and I don't know if you remember. Mm-hmm. There's a game that came out years ago called like VVVVV or something. And the gameplay trick to it was like a Flash game, I think. I know I've played it, but I can't remember if I ever made it to a computer familiar. Off of Flash or on consoles. But the gameplay thing was that you'd hit the jump button, and when you would, gravity would flip upside down, and you'd essentially fall towards the ceiling.
That sounds pretty cool.
And I actually like that gameplay mechanic. So there's a game called Gravity Duck on Vita where that's essentially the gameplay. And it gets more complicated as there's things that will rotate the orientation and make you fall in different directions. It's not an incredibly hard game, but it's fun in terms of platforming / puzzle solving.
Yeah.
So I played that, got the platinum in that, probably in about an hour, I'd say, which was kind of surprising. There's more levels. I kept playing it, but the platinum, it's one of those games where you can get the platinum like midway through the game.
Yeah, that's kind of odd.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things you do have to do that I just did naturally that apparently got you, and some of it's like has to do with dying or completing a level quickly. So it's things that you can easily stumble across, but you may not just from beating the game regularly. But I also tried out and got the platinum in a game that I was kind of surprised ran on Vita. It's called Neon Junctions, and it's a 3D puzzle game, and it's set in like a neon Tron-looking world. You don't see your character really. You just walk around in a first-person viewpoint, and you pick up cubes and whatnot, and there's puzzles that you have to go through, connecting energy dots around for you to do your stuff.
Kind of a Tron mixed with a Portal-looking game.
But honestly, I don't know why, I've not seen very many... I said on Vita specifically, I've not seen very many indie games be 3D and actually look this pleasant. And the draw distance was forever, which was really cool because it's like it didn't cut off any part of the level. Not that it's a complicated looking world, but they actually added that into the gameplay mechanics, because what would happen is there's puzzles where a lot of the game is picking up blocks and reconnecting. Like you saw that orange glow.
Yeah.
Well, that's power, and there'll be gaps in that, and you've got to fill it with blocks that will connect the power back around. But there's a lot of puzzles in how do you get blocks into the area you want, because there's blocks there's like door blockages that won't let you carry the blocks through.
Yeah.
So what you can do with its pretty much infinite draw distance, even if you're pretty far, you can get to a completely other side of the map, go around, do all the stuff you need. You can place the blocks in a couple of areas, go to the other side of the map where you can just barely see them, and you can click them and pull them into your inventory from across the map, which is just cool.
Yeah.
So it's something that, like, going back to the beginning of the PS Vita, I think you played Gravity Rush on Vita, right?
Yeah.
The original?
Absolutely.
And I liked Gravity Rush's take on dealing with the limitations of a system like that, because it was actually a pretty detailed game, and having it to where it's like, oh, well, what we're going to do, since we can't have unlimited draw distance or even far draw distances, we're going to make it to where when you're not close to something, it looks like a pencil etched version of the city, and as you get closer, it pops in with detail, but not in a way that looks like pop in.
Kind of like fading pop in a way.
Yeah. So it's cool to see that, but then for this little indie game, which I know is a lot less complicated, it was kind of just interesting to be like, endless, like not only was that accounted for, they knew that it had to work in this game, because if they had draw distance problems, you can't even solve the puzzle.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. That's an interesting way to get around technical difficulties.
Enjoyed that, though, and I haven't started it yet, but I did let your brother borrow The Last of Us 2, and he let me borrow a couple days later, while we were talking about it, Modern Warfare. So I will be starting that campaign probably when I'm done with Life is Strange 2.
That campaign, I would say, is like one of the better Call of Duty campaigns in recent. Then again, it's the only Call of Duty campaign that I've played since
in recent memory.
Infinite. Is it Infinite Warfare?
Did you play Infinite Warfare? I couldn't remember.
Is it the one with the robot?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Ethan,
yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say Aaron, but yeah, Ethan. That's the last one I played. And I actually liked it better than that one, just because it's very much grounded, and there's just a couple of missions that are like missions I always wanted to have in a Call of Duty game. Like
in Modern Warfare?
Yeah, there's one like where you raid a house and it's night vision. I'm sure you've seen the
I
stuff
saw
of that. It
yeah.
looks fantastic.
I mean, I didn't see much of it, but I remember it being in the marketing material.
Yes,
yeah.
like it looks shockingly real in some parts, because like the way the night vision works in real life, night vision's already kind of grainy as it is.
Yeah,
and the way they pulled it off, you'll see it when you play it. It's like, wow, this is kind of impressive looking for this game.
Yeah, and I should say, like, the Call of Duty games have always had okay storylines at worst.
Yeah,
you know, like they've never been bad
storyline.
Yeah, but I do think they've had a few that were exceptional. And I don't know if it's just because they just happen to be better games, or because of my interest being so much higher in stuff that is more sci-fi and futuristic. I don't know what it is. I appreciate the grounded nature. I liked Modern Warfare 1 and 2. Yeah. I didn't just like absolutely love them, but when people are like, they're some of the best shooting campaigns, I'm like, I feel you. Like, I don't agree or disagree. I'm just like, yeah, they're really good. So if you think that they're among the best, then that's cool. But I personally, I really do hope I enjoy this one, and it looks like I will. My biggest problem is going back to like World War II, because it's just been done so many times. Yeah. But I have no problem with going realistic and grounded, and I think I'll enjoy this game. But I liked so much. I liked Infinite Warfare's take on doing something that still felt grounded in a sci-fi universe. Which was kind of like, hey, we're going to make this realistic and not go too crazy with it, but it's still going to be set in sci-fi, and you're going to get some of the stuff from that. I love that one. I love that game so much. But then also, as a really surprise, and it makes me want to play Black Ops 2 if they'd ever remaster it, or maybe even get it on. Maybe I'll get it on PS3 one day. Play Black Ops 2. I played Black Ops 1. Didn't love it or hate it. I was glad it wasn't World War 2. But Black Ops 3, the campaign for that, when we got it for free as part of that surprise PS Plus thing during E3 or PSX or whatever it was. It might have been during the Game Awards.
Yeah, it was the Game Awards, I think.
Yeah, but, played that, and that game is super sci-fi and was really good, but it's also sci-fi in the sense of, like, it's going to the craziest reaches of it, and it makes it really interesting and cool, but it's not necessarily grounded.
Right.
But, yeah, so I was really bummed, after playing Black Ops 3, I was really bummed that Black Ops 4 was like, well, we're going to make Black Ops 4 and then not even include a campaign. Because in my mind, if they keep going forward with that, I thought that was really cool. Now, that brings us to the Call of Duty rumors that have been going around that Black Ops is coming back this year, but it's going to be Black Ops Cold War. Have you seen those?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which
it'd be breaking a weird cycle
of the games constantly moving forward in time.
Yeah,
as they kind of were.
Yeah,
I mean, it's weird because
it's kind of refreshing in a way.
Because Black Ops I think Black Ops 2 was where they introduced androids, I think, and like mech bodies that people could use, and then it was in 3's storyline. I think it was in 4's multiplayer, right?
I don't think 2 had that. I think 2 was the introduction to like all the weird gadgets and stuff that you could do. Like 2 was the first one that had the little mini attack drone helicopter that you could do as a kill streak.
Yeah, I remember the story because it had like a grapple hook that you could. I mean, I remember seeing not the story rather. I'm sorry. I remember seeing trailers and stuff for it.
I don't remember that game that well. That's been a while since I played it because that was back on 360.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like that game, it started to go into the more like futuristic. At the time, like there was not much other Call of Duty stuff coming up that was that futuristic.
Well, I remember one of the things about the trailers for it that just surprised me was like, in one moment it looks futuristic and gadget, like really gadget wise, and you're having this grapple hook, and then the next moment it's like you're riding horses through a desert.
Oh, see, I don't remember that at all.
And maybe I'm mixing it up with the Uncharted 3 stuff, and they may have come out the same year. I'm actually not sure, but I'm pretty sure I remember there being some not robots. Dan. I'm pretty sure I remembered there being horses in the trailer for that 2012, so no, it wouldn't have been the same year.
Maybe there was. I don't remember. I know for sure that game focused on like normal guns for the most
horses.
part, and then like futuristic gadgets.
This just seemed like such a and of course you're riding on the back with a gun in your hand. So
well, Black Ops also does stuff weird with their story with time.
Oh, where they flip back and forth.
Yeah.
Again, having not played Black Ops 2, I just remember seeing the trailers and being like, that's weird.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've played those games, campaign, but I remember it having to do with weird stuff with time. Like, I think 2 is like a weird... 2 is a sequel, but at the same time, at the end, there's a character or something that ends up being... I don't remember it fully, but I remember...
You're right, because Black Ops 3 has got a mission where you go back into like a really crazy World War... now, of course, you're not going to be able to find it. If I'm not mistaken, there's like a World War II level that you're going back and playing, and it's like during part of World War II, which I thought was cool, because it's like, here's a way to get me to play World War II stuff without having to have an entire game based around it, and you still get to use all your powers that you had in the normal stuff in this like broken, fragmented memory thing. It wasn't exactly, but it was kind of like how you went to the certain flashbacks during Death Stranding of what felt like World War II imagery.
Or you're leaving out another game, The Darkness.
The Darkness is also very good.
That went back to World War II.
Yep.
But I guess
that's a common thing.
We can get out of this segment with what I've been playing. I've been playing Destiny 2 still, kind of hopping on, not every day, but like 3 days of the week to do my bounties and stuff. And then yesterday, me, Joe, and Gavin did the new dungeon, which is honestly...
Hey, what's a dungeon as opposed to...
A dungeon is the new dungeons that are like Shattered Throne, Pit of Heresy, The Prophecy.
Okay, I didn't know Shattered Throne was considered a dungeon.
They are what I would consider 3-man raids, especially The Prophecy.
Yes, I remember we did Shattered Throne, but I don't think we beat it. It's been years ago. We tried once. We were doing something. I don't think we beat it.
Dreaming City came out or whatever.
Yeah.
Forsaken. But The Prophecy is probably one of the coolest looking. If I can spell.
No, this one's new.
Yes, this one came out 2 weeks ago. When the season came out, it might have been 3 weeks ago at this point. I think it was. But yeah, Prophecy is like one of the most coolest looking pieces that's ever been in a Destiny game before, like where you're actually going through like the knot and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's really cool looking.
That's like Rainbow Road. You get on your Sparrow and just ride around on that thing. But yeah, so I did that, and I've been playing a little bit of Destiny pretty much every other day or so. But I have played Days Gone yesterday for a couple hours, but I didn't progress the story at all. I was trying to go around and do side quests for the camps that I could.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was kind of just going through and exploring stuff and trying to find, like, I would find a Ripper camp or something, and then I'd see if there's a bunker and try to go through the bunker stuff. Probably today at some point. Actually, it might be tomorrow. At some point, I probably will play some more. I'll actually resume back into the story this time around. But other than that, that's really kind of been it. I still haven't gotten my hands on a Switch Lite. So I haven't been playing nothing in that regard.
The search has been ever going, man.
Yeah. But I also played a little bit of Destiny 2 on PC this week. I'm still looking to upgrade my PC setup soon.
Yeah.
And getting I think I found the monitor I'm going to get. It actually seems like a pretty good deal. It's like a 32-inch 1440p 200 hertz screen made by Samsung.
200 hertz instead of 240?
Yeah. Well,
or 144?
It's 144, yeah. Because I think 240 is on some of them, but that's like...
Yeah, it's really high.
Yeah, you don't even need that.
Yeah.
Not now, at least. Only $700. I say only $700, but like for a monitor that has HDR, IPS screen that's 1440 hertz, that's 1 millisecond, 200, or it's 1440p. 200 hertz. That's a pretty good price. Like, it's hard to find a good monitor that's that big, that's IPS. It nails like HDR all that stuff.
Yeah, no, HDR has been really behind in computer gaming screens.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's in the games, but very few screens can even use it.
Yeah. Well, I say now it's getting to the point where you can find a decent 1080p HDR monitor, but like by decent I mean like still $300.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you get like 144 hertz and stuff, so
yeah, it'd be cool when they do more crossplay for stuff like that because I think PS5 will very likely handle most of the problems I had with Destiny 2's disparity between the computer and the PC and the PS4 version, and by that extension also the Xbox versions. It's weird, man. Watching you play on your computer that day, I was like, it's not even. It does graphically look better, but I was like, it's not even that is what you want. It's that it feels smoother.
Yeah, it's literally a different game.
You know, I'm normally not much for the. I do prefer 60 frames per second when I can get it, but I think most of the genres that I enjoy
are fine.
Don't demand 60 frames per second. But I think a game like Destiny shows. I think the only shooter games that really do okay at 30 frames per second is more story-driven shooter games that are like. That are kind of doing a romp across the world. Like Resistance 3 felt fine in 30 frames per second because it's a very different type of shooter. I think Metro Exodus and Metro, all the Metro games are 30 frames per second in their original. I think Redux was 60, and I never played Redux even though I've owned it for a while. But
you should. It's good.
I should, but those games all felt fine to me in 30 frames per second. But when you start getting into games that are like Call of Duty and Warframe and Destiny, it's like 60 frames per second is really needed here.
Like that's what you want. Like for me, I prefer 60 over everything. Like I'd take 60 in even story-based games.
Oh, I would if it could, but I'm not. It's not like a. I don't know that Uncharted. I don't know that Uncharted 4 or The Last of Us 2 needs to be 60. It just needs to be a solid 30, and at least.
Boy, Last of Us 2 at 60 frames per second. That'd be nuts.
If you remember, The Last of Us 1 came out. And I don't expect this to necessarily happen again, but The Last of Us 1 came out a year after on PS4 with 60 frames per second.
It looks great. That remaster is flawless.
You know what was crazy about that? About the remaster is they actually went and recompiled all the cutscenes at 60 frames per second so that there was no disconnect between gameplay.
That's how you do a remaster.
Yeah.
There's been a couple games
when I see remasters that are 60 frames per second, it cuts to it, which The Last of Us 2 wouldn't have that anyway because 90% of the cutscenes are they're all in engine, but they're real time in game. There's no transition. But God, I hate so much when you see a game suddenly have a 60 frames per second gameplay and then a 30 frames per second.
It's so jarring.
Yeah,
it's literally as jarring as a 60 frames per second game frame dropping to 30 because it's what it's doing.
It's
pretty bad. Let's move into the news.
Okay, well, the first thing we got to do is Community's Take.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Topic.
You got it. Okay, the Community's Take for this week was pretty simple. With everything going around last week and seeing a bunch of new stuff, we came out and said, where do you stand in regards to Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics' Marvel Avengers? Since the new gameplay, are you excited for it? Is it the type of game you hoped for? Would you have preferred a different take with it? Now, over in the Discord, we're going to hit up one of our new patrons, Mr. The Snow Jedi, he may not know his name, but he may not want his name known, I should say. But thank you very much for becoming a patron. We appreciate you. He says it looks really boring and the movement of the characters seems badly designed. Maybe they could learn from Insomniac. And somebody else coming through here, Mr. Swanland, one of our other patrons, he says there doesn't seem to be any weight to the attacks as seen in Thor's demo. It looks like he's flailing around and not making contact with anything. Was very underwhelmed and let down. And I actually do agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's a huge disconnect in games to me. When you're doing something that's crazy, and it's like, but why is it not affecting the world at all?
I will say Anthem had really good weight to everything.
Anthem had fantastic weight. And I think one of the biggest things about games like Anthem and even something that like Horizon, which one of the things that was unfortunate in the Horizon Forbidden West trailer, I don't know if you saw it, most of the game had grass and stuff that was swaying with wind and movement and stuff. Mm-hmm. Did you see when they're taking down the big boar looking robot? It's when it shows silence and then you see the guys and they do it and it comes down to the ground.
Yeah.
None of the grass moves or anything. Now, this is a game that's not even close to release.
I never noticed that till now, though.
So it's fine. But it was one of those moments where whenever I was rewatching the trailer the other day, I was like, I guess this is kind of proof. Well, I guess this is kind of proof of where we are in this game. Like, it's being shown, but it's probably not ready, because with them having the wind blow the grass, I have every feeling in the world that they're going to do the same thing here, where when the boar weight drops. But that goes back to the thing of like that's what Anthem did well. When you land, you see things around you kind of bristle and move, and the weight, and part of it's of course in vibration of the controller. You always want that in the game, and that's hard. You can't see that, but that does add to the weight. Is like, how do they make it feel when you land? Like, how does it feel in the controller? Does it feel heavy and thick and kind of?
I'm
like
curious
a quick
how the
burst?
DualSense is going to handle that.
Yeah, me too. But let me go grab some from over on Twitter.
Well, I'm already here, so I can hit you with No Fate, aka Sean One Neo, one of our longtime friends. He says, I personally don't like the art design. I've heard nothing but bad comments, and it being some kind of games as a service all ring alarm bells. I think what people really want is something more like Marvel Alliance. I predict this game will flop to a free-to-play service. I actually could see that happening with this game. This game, now I know why it kind of looks off to me, and you'll probably disagree. I was not a fan of DCU online.
DC Universe Online?
Yeah, to me, that game just looked bad or off in terms of everything, like the gameplay, the graphics. It all just looked weird. And that game eventually became free to play, technically.
Yeah, it did. Now, here's the thing about DC Universe, and this is just a curiosity of knowing where you said that. When did you first see the game?
When it came out.
Okay, so you did know
Scoops, Scoops bought it, and I was watching him play it at his house. I'm like, no, they don't look like for me.
See, I love that game. Now, you're not wrong in the sense of, I don't necessarily know that at the time, and I don't know what it looks like. I haven't played it on PS4, even though I did love that game. I just played hundreds upon hundreds of hours on PS3, so it kind of felt like I'm getting a PS4. I don't need to play more of it. But me, Jonathan, and Blaze all played it. I love the game for a number of things, but a lot of those things were buried in the fact of what you'd expect from a PS3 game. Now, what's weird is I'll say that was a late-gen PS3 game, just like this is going to be a late-gen PS4 game. But this feels like it has less of what you'd expect from a PS4 game, at least from what's been seen.
Yeah.
It's weird because I don't think that graphically, I think the game looks fine, but I do agree with the sense of disconnect in things.
Yeah.
And I do think that some of the character designs look strange.
I think all of the art design is strange.
Yeah, I mean, like, so a lot of the character bodies and stuff look fine in terms of like, if you weren't knowing who it was, you know what I mean? I think that's... You get into this weird thing where the art style that they're trying to use here to differentiate, which we also saw in Marvel Spider-Man, not only did they want to create a different... I mean, they wanted to look hyper-realistic, but they wanted to create their own Spider-Man. They wanted their own design of Peter Parker. They wanted their own design of Spider-Man and what the suit looked like. And I think you're seeing a lot of that here. I think where the big disconnect's happening with a lot of people, and including myself, I never anticipated this game to be a Destiny-style game. And that's actually over here, Chris Figuera, which is my co-host over on the Midweek Matinee Movie podcast that we do every week. He is a huge Marvel fan, absolutely huge Marvel fan. Has seen all the movies, loves them. He says, I would always prefer that a game like this is a single-player story, but I'm interested to see the loop. The only live service I play is Apex Legends, and I'd be interested to see if it can steal any of my Apex time away. Now, I think the reason I want to shout that one out is I think most people who were big fans of Marvel were not, like, when it was originally announced forever ago that Crystal Dynamics was making a Marvel Avengers game. Mm-hmm. When you look at that, Crystal Dynamics at the time had been making story-driven Tomb Raider games.
You would have thought
and story-driven Thief, and they had Deus Ex at some point, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm trying to remember if they were ever behind Deus Ex. I know that they at least did Thief, and they did, of course, the two Tomb Raider games before it ended up getting moved around.
Yeah.
But
you would expect an Avengers level game of that nature.
Yeah, it seems like they're obvious. Okay, it seems like if you wanted somebody to make this game that they're trying to make, and no hate on them, I get that they're trying to do something different for the studio, and I'm not even going to say that they're not dedicated to what they're doing and it's just not sticking with fans. Who knows? But I think what's happening here is that technically I felt this for Spider-Man 2. At the same time, Insomniac seemed like a very weird developer to give Spider-Man to at the time. The only game they had that would have led you to believe at all that they could make that type of game was Sunset Overdrive. But it was not a huge performer, and it was kind of weird.
Compare Ratchet and Clank and stuff.
to Spider-Man?
Yeah.
I mean, in what direction? I guess.
I mean, in a very well. I mean, in the direction of the world. I guess it's a very openish kind of world in each segment. And there's kind of a good sense of exploration in Ratchet and Clank. I would say that there's
I mean, you're not wrong there. They're not open worlds. Ratchet and Clank's actually really tiny worlds. I mean, I like the game and I like what it's trying to do, but
maybe it's just been so long since I played Ratchet and Clank. I remember them worlds being bigger than they are.
I mean, I think maybe it was a context thing. They were big for their time,
maybe, so.
But they were never open world.
Yeah, because it's been a long time since I played Ratchet and Clank.
I do agree with your stance on them being good for exploration within reason.
Yeah.
But I guess to me, as like a perfect example, definitely whenever people said when the rumor started, there's a Spider-Man game, it's exclusive to PlayStation. This is before we ever actually
that
knew
actually
anything.
wasn't surprising to me for some reason.
That it was Insomniac?
No, that was exclusive PlayStation.
Oh, not that. No, so that wasn't surprising. Definitely because I ththought about the movies. Everybody kind of had that. What was surprising is that when you think about it, exclusive to PlayStation, Spider-Man, who does Sony already have in their first-party docket who has made really amazing superhero games? Sucker Punch.
Yeah.
Everybody thought it was going to be Sucker Punch, including me. And when they said it's Insomniac, I was like, what the hell?
I could see that. That reasoning. Perfectly clear.
While I don't think Spider-Man is a 10 out of 10 game that I think some people think it was, I do think it was very good, and it proved that Insomniac could do it. And I think that in a sequel, they will probably shore up some of the very few issues I had with the first game.
I think Spider-Man is the perfect game. This is kind of a hot take, but Spider-Man is the perfect game to show you that a 7 out of 10 does not mean it's bad.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I'd call it a 7 out of 10, but it's definitely not a 10 out of 10. 8.5 for me, personally,
I'd call it probably a 7.5 at highest for me.
Yeah. Either way, I think that so this would be just as weird, in my opinion, as though it's a little bit more reasonable. It'd be just as weird if they're like, we're making a Spider-Man game, but it's going to be an online game where you all play as Spider-Man in the same world, which I know is not what's going to happen here. This is kind of like a mix between a hero shooter and Destiny, and where it's like there can only ever be one Thor and there can only ever be one Captain America on your team that you're building up.
My thing with this, though, is that anytime a developer like Crystal with a publisher like Square as a publisher has experience with games as a service, because you look at Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah.
Crystal Dynamics, though, they don't have a games as a service.
Yeah.
This is going to be a very rocky game when it comes out, because it's really hard to nail games as a service, especially on your first attempt. People like Bungie and Blizzard are still learning from their mistakes, and they've been doing this now at this point for almost a decade. You're going to have a one-time person come out that's never made a game as a service before. It's going to be published by Square Enix, who I'm sure can give them guidance. But at the same time, it's going to be kind of iffy. I get the same vibes with this game that I got with Anthem, that I knew that the launch was going to be rocky, that content's going to be very shallow in a way at the beginning compared to the content that will be launched at in-game, if there is ever in-game content for either one of these games. But that's kind of my take on it, is that it's coming out by a person that's never made a game as a service before, and it's a very competitive market. It's a very small market too. People think that's a massive market. That's a small market, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's a massive market with not very much share.
Well, I'll say it's small in terms of what's been successful, because you have like Warframe, Destiny. I guess Call of Duty's kind of moving that way, but I still don't really see that as games as a service. You have kind of like Fortnite.
I think the Division 1 was a big success in that regard.
But it's kind of like...
And those three games are all quite different.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you narrow it down to 5 or less games, where if you say RPG, well, you can name you 20 games that came out in the past 2 years that would be good RPGs.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Going back to your Square thing, that's just interesting, though. I think a big takeaway here is that a team doing it on their first chance is already going to be rocky. But even you mentioned Square, who have games as a service experience. Yeah. Even a company that has games as a service experience, they did Final Fantasy 11 online for years. And when Final Fantasy 14 online first released back in the PS3 era, it was a complete mess.
There's a reason a Meteor took the game out and they had to recreate it.
So even people who have experience fumble. I mean, we saw that with Destiny. They fumbled with Destiny 2 multiple times after building Destiny 1 up. I might say multiple times, but they definitely fumbled with Destiny 2 in some regard after having built up the first Destiny.
Yeah, the first year was a fumble.
Yeah.
Our good buddy Kevin Baconbits on Twitter. Ooh. Sorry, I got invaded by hiccups.
And a patron.
Yeah, the hiccups ain't letting me get that out. Excuse me. Is that the game I would hope for out of the Avengers? And I don't know if I'll end up playing. Getting a little burnout on Destiny / Division type of games. They could always convince me otherwise, though, which is kind of a good mindset to have.
Yeah, good in between. I'm going to throw one over from Facebook as well, from a new member of our Facebook group, Mr. Nicholas Horder. He says, have to do my research. Haven't seen the new footage yet, but I tend to lean more towards a good single-player experience myself.
That's a fair assessment. You'll never get let down by sticking to your guns.
Yep. All right, let's see if there's any more that we want to go grab from Discord. I think this is a good, short, and sweet one.
Yeah.
Atlas Unchained says, it's a great concept that feels 2 years late, and when I see gameplay, it looks bad in my opinion.
See, my thing is that if you're going to pick up a games as a service, some people are going to pick this up just for the Marvel skin, all right? They want to play as their characters.
Sure.
But some people, I would recommend you to play like Warframe
Mm-hmm.
or Destiny 2 or games like that, like Apex, I guess technically is a games as a service now.
I guess the idea is games that let you have a power fantasy in the similar way of what you'd expect from something from Marvel, but do it more competently within their genre.
The thing with Marvel is I don't think I've ever from a Marvel game had a well enough done power fantasy. Spider-Man was the closest I think I came to that.
I'm trying to think of other Marvel games, honestly, in the in-between.
All the Ultimate Alliances.
I mean, honestly, I guess I did have some power fantasy moments in the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 games, which were pretty solid. Spider-Man's always been the closest they've got. There's a handful of surprisingly all right Spider-Man games, like some that were even, I'd say, pretty good, even though Insomniacs is the best so far. But yeah, I think you're right. I've played the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games, which are meant to be a little bit more of like a dungeon crawler that y'all come through. They're fun enough, but they don't quite exceed in the power fantasy thing.
Yeah. You could do like cool combos and stuff with those games, but other than that, Batman, you have Batman on DC side with all the Arkham games.
Yeah,
and that is
the
perfect like Batman power fantasy there.
Yeah. Well, and bringing it back to Anthem and the type of game that this is, actually, recently, one of the best power fantasies I've kind of had in a game is whenever I was working on Anthem's Platinum, so I was just flying around and trying to find collectibles within the open world. Because I was just trying to make it quick and easy and not pay attention to it, I just put the game on easy while I was flying around. But then stuff would attack you sometimes, so it's just going to do that. So I started shooting, and I was like, oh, wow. I was like, this game is, when you're playing this on easy, the power fantasy is ridiculous. You're just blowing stuff up. You're throwing down. There's a ton of stuff going on screen. So I guess their argument could be made that this might be the game to do that in, even if it requires you to put the game on easy in order to hit that power fantasy. All right, let's see. I don't know if there's anything too much more. I'm going to give Mr. Bring the Pain the last one here. He says it looks a lot more better than when they showed it off, and I'm still mad about it because looking at the sky and stuff, there was a load of gray color. It looks a lot like Civil War movie. Lots of gray tones and mute colors, with the flashy attacks being the colors. And like Swanland said, the attacks don't feel like they have weight to it. I feel like the best characters to play would be like Cap or like Hulk of all of them, but I want more heroes than the others. The movement seems off too. And that leads us to the one thing that was just kind of a mention on Twitter. One of the people said that they're not into it yet because it seems fishy, and also they've not even seen gameplay from their favorite Avenger, Captain America.
Yeah, it's kind of weird for the lack of stuff we've seen of this game for it to be coming out so quickly.
Yeah, because when did they move it back to? Was it September?
September something.
Alongside when Cyberpunk was supposed to come out?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is what it is. Thanks to all of you, though, who gave your thing. I actually did read all of these, so even if you didn't get mentioned on here, I saw what you said, and you know what? I feel you. I understand where you're coming from. It does seem like more than anything, most people are either not into it or just cautiously optimistic, as we like to say on this show, where it's like they're not immediately hating it, but they don't necessarily know what there is to love just yet.
Yeah.
So, I would love to see someone who's just like ridiculously hyped about this game, but I've not seen that much anywhere. Even on Twitter, where you can normally see the extremes on both sides, where it's people who absolutely hate what they're being shown and people who totally love it. I've not even seen that. It seems like across the board, most of what's being shown here is people just kind of going, eh?
Thor's like abdomen is shaped like a mini fridge. It just looks, I don't know what it is about this game, but it looks so off. Like you see it, like I think I've been able to perfectly describe on why I think this looks like a mobile game. Because those mobile games, you always get those really, really fake looking CGI commercials for them, and you're like, oh, that looks cool, and then you look at the gameplay and you're like, oh, I think this kind of has the vibe like this. Every time I see a character, I'm like, oh, that looks cool. But then I see the game in action. I'm like, oh, no, that doesn't look good.
Who knows?
I don't know.
You are right about that, though. Man, mobile gameplay ads are the worst. Okay. Well, we're going to head over into the news, but thanks, everyone, for the community's take.
Thank you all.
So first thing we're going to do in the news is touch back on last week's news that we talked about with PS Plus turning 10. We now know at the very least what we'll be getting games-wise is NBA 2K20 and Rise of the Tomb Raider are going to be free starting July 7th for all users. As an extra for celebrating 10 years, users can also grab Erica, which is like FMV-style decision-based narrative, kind of like the Telltale games or something more along the lines of... Actually, if you've played this on PlayStation 4, there's a game called Late Shift that is pretty much exactly this. It's real filmed, but then it's all layered in with what decisions you make as how it will continue and what ending options you have. But there's also going to be a free PS4 theme for the anniversary of it. Now, they've not said anything, and I don't know if this is going to be the only month that they do something as a actual celebration month. As much as I don't think it'll happen, I think it'd be really cool if the way that they choose to do this, definitely since they made their little artwork of PS Plus 10 years, would be to do it for the next year, have a full 10-year anniversary thing where every month is bigger games. This is actually a pretty solid month. It doesn't mean that they're games that people don't own.
Yeah.
But NBA 2K20 is pretty new, and it's a good thing to give out to people, even if it's been on sale a lot.
I wonder if they're going to do the same thing
Tomb Raider
they did last time, where they put it in commercials now for it being free.
Who knows? Maybe. Last time it was commercials after being $2.99, wasn't it? In 2K19,
$2.99 or $3.99. It was cheap.
It was really cheap. The other thing I could see is the way what they may do for the next year, celebrating 10 years, is every month we get a bonus game, even though originally we were just supposed to be getting 2 games. That they may do one smaller bonus game, but
that would be kind of cool.
Who knows?
Is Rise of the Tomb Raider the first one in the series?
No, it is the second one. The first one was actually a PS3 game. It did get remastered for PS4, and I think it's been free on PS Plus before.
What is that one called?
Tomb Raider.
I hate these stupid naming conventions. There's Rise of the Tomb Raider, then Tomb Raider.
It's Tomb Raider,
Rise of the
Tomb Raider, and then Shadow of the Tomb Raider. That one in particular is weird, but I actually am a huge fan of non-number related games. I really love like the Prince of Persia games. How it's like Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, Prince of Persia: Warrior Within, and then Prince of Persia: Two Thrones. I like that because you don't ever forget which order they came out in. Definitely if you've played them, and it makes for way more interesting names, and it makes for more flexibility. Because the problem with God of War is if they had to call them God of War 1, God of War 2, God of War 3, and now what do you get? God of War. If all God of Wars would have decided to have a surname with no number, then you wouldn't be in the situation where it's like you have to put God of War parentheses 2018 in parentheses. Because if you go to talk to someone now and you're like, I really like God of War, and it's like, are they going to give me more context clues as to which one they're talking about?
David Jaffe or Cory Balrog? And yes, Balrog.
Yeah. Anyway, next thing up is Spiders, the developer behind my much-loved Greedfall, will be revealing its next game under their new owner, Nacon. Yes, the same Nacon that makes controllers. This week at Nacon Connect on July 7th. Apparently there was a merger between Nacon and an old company, Big Ben something. It's a publisher.
Is it a clock company?
That'd be funny, wouldn't it? I think they're just a London publisher. But they were like some of the WRC games and some different racing games, like the Rolla Pro Fishing. Very odd developer, or very odd publisher. And then for it to be publishing games now that are so far outside of what those are and buying developers, it looks like they're trying to make moves, which we continue to see moves be made in the AA sphere.
Yeah.
My only hope here is I think a big reason that Greedfall was so good. I've always said Spiders has had super unique ideas for years, but it's always like they were never quite big enough of a team, or never were given quite enough money to make their games work the way that you'd want them to. And Greedfall is the first time that I feel like they got given a big enough surge of money and enough time to make something that was really close to what their original vision was, if maybe not dead on the money. It felt dead on the money to me.
You know what that'd be cool if they did? They took a sequel to Greedfall and they made it in London with werewolves. So we can have like an 1886 spiritual successor.
So here's the thing I'm a little unsure of, and I'm sure I can find out and look it up. Spiders was originally just a independent studio, and the last few games that they did were published under Focus Home Interactive.
Yeah.
And Focus Home Interactive had that surge where for about 2-3 years they were putting a lot of money behind games, and that's why we've seen a lot of their games get high recognition. We saw World War Z do very well for them. We saw Plague Tale: Innocence do very well for them. Of course, we saw Greedfall do very well for them. The Surge 2 did very well for them. So when you look at how much money they put behind
They made
stuff,
the Surge 2.
Yeah.
They made the Surge 1 as well.
Yes. Now the Surge,
I don't like this company anymore.
the Surge 2, while I've not played it, was reviewed much higher and sold way better.
I'm one of those weird people that if like one game in a series is not good, I just won't play the rest of the series.
I'm that's fair. I'm not hating on that at all. But
I don't know why. It's that might be why like I haven't played The Last of Us 2 yet. Is like I'm so like sad with that I'm just like I'm just gonna remember what I want to remember about that series.
I guess it doesn't matter. Then again, that's a little different because you've already played the one game that you love, and there's not a game after this. It'd be different if it's like you don't want to play the second one because the first one sucked, or you don't want to play the third one because the second one sucked.
But then I can't say I love the Surge series because then there's that
Then why first of all, why the hell do you play Devil May Cry 3? You don't like Devil May Cry 2.
Yes, I do. I've never said I'd never like Devil May Cry 2.
Okay.
You're getting me confused.
You talk a lot of mess on it.
You're getting me confused with different people. I don't like Devil May Cry 2 in context of the rest of the series, but it is not as bad of a game as everybody makes it out to be.
Okay.
Everybody doesn't understand that before they retconned the timeline, that was when Dante was at his oldest.
Yeah.
So he was less mature.
Yeah.
Or he was more mature.
More mature, yeah. Either way, my worry here is that Nacon buying them, I hope that the move here is that if they're buying them and doing something so different that they're giving them the budget they need to make a good game. But here's the big thing. I don't know if Focus Home Interactive owns Greedfall as a IP or if Spiders owns Greedfall as an IP. I would have to imagine, as most publishers do, they want to own the game.
Focus Home Interactive is owned Greedfall.
Not surprised. So we won't see another Greedfall, but we can see a spiritual successor. There's no reason that they can't do a similar game.
Yeah.
But it's a little sad because the world of Greedfall was really cool, and I'm one of those big people, like I mentioned with The Order. I don't want someone else trying to touch into a world because we always see that fail. I think one of the only games I've liked where another developer came into a series I really loved, and I'm in the minority on this. I really thought that Sly Cooper 4 was really good. It wasn't perfect, but it was good.
I still never played it, but like I heard a lot of people outcry about it, but then I've heard people say it was really good.
Yeah, there's one thing in particular.
Is it the Devil May Cry 2 of the Sly series?
No, not really. I think it plays and feels a lot more like a Sly game. I think there's one character in particular who I completely agree with the fact that it feels convenient that they would do this and it feels out of character for the person, which is funny because that's the argument going around The Last of Us 2 right now, and it feels way more true to Sly Cooper 4 in this one character than it does in The Last of Us to me. But hey, is what it is. But yeah, I am not a huge fan of that. Either way, excited for their next game. Next thing up is after a leak of the trailer for the game came out, Crysis Remastered has been decided to be delayed in an effort to address some of the criticisms leveraged against what could be seen in the trailer from the gameplay. For anyone hoping that the massive changes will be coming because of this, I wouldn't get my hopes up because the statement from Crytek that initially announced this says that the wording is weird, so it could be poor wording. But it says that they will be delaying the game and the trailer for a few weeks. Now, are they saying that they're delaying the game indefinitely and the trailer for a few weeks? Or are they saying they're delaying both the game and the trailer for just a few weeks?
It's weird corporate speak.
Yeah, I think the problem here comes if you expect 3 to 4 weeks to make a huge change in a game, you're gonna
be disappointed.
Massively disappointed. Did you happen to watch the trailer?
No, I don't really care. Care to.
I didn't know if you had any interest in this. I do because I've played Crysis and I liked it, but I've never gotten to beat it. Partially too because once it came on PS3 and Xbox, I was like, this looks so rough that I don't really want to play it here, and it didn't perform very well. Crysis 2 I loved and I beat that, but one of my things here from looking at it is part of this plays into the old Crysis joke about how it's supposed to be super graphically cutting edge.
Yeah,
and the problem with this is while it does look mostly better than the original game, though there are a few parts in the original game that actually look better than this. It's kind of like They just barely. It's almost like they just recompiled the game in Crytek 5 instead of in the original CryEngine.
Yeah.
Or CryEngine 5 instead of the original CryEngine. And the problem with that comes down to, is it really a remaster, or is it just a game you're recompiling into a new engine, and it'll automatically get the benefits that the engine will bring, like slightly better lighting and stuff like that. I hope that they come out with something that is pretty crazy, but the gameplay that they showed was apparently from PC, so you can only imagine it's not going to be that good on console.
Yeah.
Who knows? So we'll see what happens with that. Maybe they'll get some more polish out of it. Maybe it is delayed indefinitely so that they can actually go back and do more to it. But honestly, who knows? The problem with Crysis is, even though I think it's a cool series, long, long ago when they became the PC melters, they already messed up in having it to where the graphical fidelity of their games has to be so ridiculously good in context to the things that it's releasing around, that if you're not, it doesn't even matter if the game's good. No one's going to care, because you've become the people. Definitely with Crysis as the fledgling series for this, to where it has to look bonkers.
You've become the meme, essentially.
Yeah. And it sucks because nobody thinks about it. But have you ever played The Hunt Showdown? Or even heard of it?
Nope.
It's a Crytek game made on CryEngine 5. It's a solid looking game. It performs well. It even runs on Switch and performs well on Switch. But it's not Crysis. And most people don't even think about the fact that it's a Crytek game. When you see Crysis, you know it's Crytek and you expect it to look ridiculous.
Yeah.
It'd be like if you came out with Crysis 4 that looked the same as Crysis 3 did. People would be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is what it is. Next up, Sony's secret San Diego studio that many have speculated will be continuing the Uncharted series makes another hire in the way of Naughty Dog environment artist Zach Oliver, who worked with the company on The Last of Us all the way through to The Last of Us 2, further driving the speculation. We do not know the studio's names currently, and we haven't even seen a tease of their project at all. This is much like Xbox's The Initiative. It's two secretive studios that are getting tons of talent that are very big name talent.
Yeah, have you seen the new...
But nobody knows anything about what they're doing.
Have you seen the new theory on The Initiative? That they're making a new Fable game?
See, that one is weird because I think there's real smoke where the fire was that whenever Microsoft bought Playdead Studios, the team behind Forza Horizon, that when they bought them, they spread and did what Naughty Dog did for the original Last of Us, where they made two teams. And that the second team is the one making Fable. Now, weird, because technically Forza Horizon, definitely Forza Horizon 3 and 4, are open world games. But they're open world racing games.
Yeah.
Fable
race cars.
How does that necessarily translate
puts a whole new phrase into Chicken Chaser?
It's not impossible, but it leads into my thing of, I've always said that my problem with it is that Fable is one of the few like Microsoft series that I absolutely adore.
Yeah.
And even then, it's really just Fable 1 that I adore. Fable 2 and 3.
Fable 2 and 3. Actually, I haven't played
Fable
much of 3.
Fable 2 is fantastic, but it doesn't feel like Fable necessarily. The only one that feels decidedly like Fable to me is the first one. I had the problem playing it before everything, so it may be one of those
they all feel like Fable to me. I don't know.
Gameplay-wise, both 2 and 3.
Fable's weird, yeah. Or Fable 2 is weird.
Well, 3 is very much like... 3 is barely even a different game. I don't hate it, and I actually did get around to playing a little bit of it when I didn't finish 2, just to see what it's like. It's weird. But, yeah, both of these teams are just making stuff. And wouldn't it be weird, though? If I'm being honest, I'm going to be super disappointed if both The Initiative and Sony San Diego studio that's hiring all this talent are doing so just to continue franchises. Uncharted's a little different. It's still made tons of money, so there's more reason for Sony to do it, but I'm still going to be disappointed that you would create a new studio, bring all these people in, just to waste that without doing something new.
Yeah,
Let them make something new.
I want to see new stuff. I'm tired of seeing the same 5 big games for both teams. I want something new.
Like, if they announce Uncharted 5, clearly I'm going to play Uncharted 5, unless I can't even imagine what they'd show that would turn me off of it. I loved Golden Abyss, but it's just not what I want to see.
Yeah.
Just as much as I was glad, I loved Golden Abyss, I'm glad to see Ben to get to move on and make something new in Days Gone. That's awesome.
Now I want Days Gone too.
Yeah, and after you give Days Gone a couple of runs for their money, 2, maybe 3 games, let them go off and do something new if they want to. Don't be just putting people together and be like, you're all very talented, now make the next Uncharted. So can we just not have Uncharted for a few years.
No,
It's
just
weird.
kill it. End it.
Well, look, it's weird.
End it.
Because I know that I exist as a hypocrite in this way. But I think it's part of the reason I've been saying it lately is I think it's been long enough. I think that Uncharted can go away for 10 years, right?
No, because inevitably they're not going to do what everybody wants them to do and make a sequel following Drake's daughter. They're going to make a remake following a different casted Drake.
I don't think so, actually.
A different casted Sully.
I don't think so.
There's only 2 rounds to go with Uncharted.
Even then, let's just say, I think people would want it to continue, and I think that they know that, and that'd be where the money's at. But I say I exist as a hypocrite because I know I'm constantly saying that I want to see another Killzone and another Resistance.
But we haven't seen those series in 10 years.
Exactly.
I mean, well, we've seen Killzone, but...
Well, I mean, okay, it's been really 7 years for both of them.
Shadowfall did not feel like a Killzone game to me.
It did, and actually, from a story perspective, it really did. Gameplay, it still felt like Killzone, but it was a little bit more modernized.
Yeah, it was really modernized.
Because I actually think, hot take, I think Killzone is more modern, has always been more modern as a shooter series than anything of its contemporaries around it, in terms of weight and feel and just feeling unique, but still on the money. But with that said, it's been 7 years since we've seen Killzone. It's been, I think,
1 week since you looked at me.
Yeah, it's been 8 years since we've seen Resistance, and the last Resistance we saw was Burning Skies.
Yeah,
which is not a great way to end. It's not a terrible game, but it's not a great way to end a series. It's kind of like how the last Jack and Daxter game we saw was the PSP Jack and Daxter, The Lost Frontier or something.
I remember whenever I first had my Vita, and I was looking up YouTube videos of like the top 10 best Vita games and the top 10 worst Vita games. Resistance was always in the top 10 worst. Every video I watched, every time there was a worst list, Resistance was in there.
It's not a bad game. It's just not good.
If you say what does that mean then?
If you say, okay, it's not a bad game, but it's not good for the series. Does that make sense? Like,
Devil May Cry 2?
If it didn't say the Resistance word label on it anywhere, and
Dark
you just
Souls
played
2.
it, you'd be like, okay, like it's not a bad game. Perfect example: Mass Effect Andromeda. I don't think Mass Effect Andromeda wouldn't got near the crap it got if it didn't carry the Mass Effect name. I'm
pretty sure it still would, because it's a BioWare game.
It's okay.
People are looking at BioWare games like Dragon Age. You saw how hard Dragon Age.
Okay, but take that away. Let's just say, look at the game without worrying about what series it's from or who made it. Look at the game itself. Look at the final product. Mass Effect Andromeda is not a terrible game, but it's also not amazing.
Upon release?
Yeah.
No.
Even upon release?
There is too much stuff wrong.
I'm not saying it would be a 10 out of 10, but it would be a game where people
10.
would look at it and be like, it's a 7 out of 10 with some glitches that need to be fixed.
No. Spider-Man's a 7 out of 10 to me. That game will be a 2 out of 10.
Days Gone and that game were very similar in how buggy they were at launch. And
Days Gone was worse than I thought it was then. Because remember, I didn't play Days Gone at launch.
I played both Days Gone and Mass Effect Andromeda at launch. Both of them were mildly buggy.
Mass Effect had what seemed to be way more dialogue issues, way more face capture issues. Did they even use facial capture, or did they just make all the characters look derpy?
It's just hand animated.
Yeah, it was all those
poorly
issues
hand animated.
Poorly, yes.
Yep.
Days Gone now though is surprising that it was ever in a really bad state. If Days Gone launched in this state, and this was made by somebody who was just like, okay, we're one and done, and I was still playing the game now as I was on day one, I'm like, okay, this is a solid like 7 out of 10 performance just because of all the issues that I'm having. But like it wouldn't push me further off of the game. I can't imagine how Days Gone 1 or Days Gone Day 1 was then.
Not that bad for me. Outside of that one time where I was just following through the planet because all but the road despawned.
To compare it to Mass Effect Andromeda though, that's pretty.
That was a worse. I never had a bug that bad in Mass Effect Andromeda. I only played it for about 15 to 20 hours. But
I bought it for $30. I took vacation. I remember this vacation. It was the vacation I took at CVS before I went from one store to another. And I was like, I don't have nothing to play. I'm gonna play Mass Effect Andromeda, and I bought it new. So then I went home and I played it for like one day, and I was like, nope, taking this back to GameStop. And Justin was like, well, I can't give you your money back. You have to trade it in. I said, I'm trading it into Watch Dogs 2. And then I did the same thing with Watch Dogs 2. The game was also garbage. I liked Watch Dogs 1. That vacation sucked.
I actually forgot about Watch Dogs 2. I have not played it yet because I'm just unsure. Either way, next thing up is pretty interesting. According to an article from Bloomberg, it appears Sony might be considering a bid for Leyou Technologies. I don't actually know how you say that, but which is a Hong Kong-based company that owns Warframe developer Digital Extremes, as well as others. The article states that Sony isn't the only potential bidder, though Sony is, quote, hoping that it can edge out other bidders with greater certainty of financing, end quote. Apparently, COVID has stopped the bidding stuff that they were originally going to do with another company, and Sony's kind of in this. It's pretty interesting. Where I stand on this is I could actually see why Sony would be interested in this. The one thing that Sony does not have, and I don't think that they would force any of their existing studios to do, is to make games as a service games. The best way to do this is to get a team that already enjoys making games as a service. Goes back to what we were talking about in the community's take.
Yeah.
The best way to do that is to buy a team that already has a game as a service, which in this case, Warframe would stay just like Minecraft. It would be a multi-platform game. There's no way Sony would make that exclusive. But what they would do is leverage that team, potentially grow it, and then have people who are knowledgeable in making games as a service game to make one for them. Now, who knows what kind of game that would be, but I think that this would be something you'd see to compete with Microsoft's games as a service, like what you see in Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is the quintessential games as a service game. It's something that you'll come back to because they update the hell out of it all the time. And that's cool. I like that. I enjoy Sea of Thieves. It's a weird game, and I don't expect it to be for everybody, but it's a cool thing to have, and it's even cooler to have as an exclusive. So if Sony wanted to do something like that, it'd be interesting. And on top of that, they'd have extra income from how crazily successful Warframe is in the door for that. So what do you think would come of that?
Honestly, I think it'd be a good buy. Maybe I would doubt that Warframe itself would have any direct changes to them, but I feel like they'd have at least a studio, or they'd have a company that would own them that would seem like they would give more funding to a game like that, because it'd be their main one.
Yeah,
their main game.
It'd be kind of like how Minecraft grew crazily after Microsoft bought
yeah.
it. Yeah, there's no reason for them to not do it at that point. It'd be... it's weird. I say that Sony doesn't currently have a games as a service. The closest thing Sony has to a games as a service is Gran Turismo Sport.
Is that a games as a service?
It continuously gets updated, continuously gets cars added to it, tracks added to it, events added to it. It's a games as a service insofar as it is constantly updating. I just don't think that most people think of racing games as a games as a service. But think about how old that game is. It came out in 2017, 16, one of those
16,
two.
I think.
And it continues to get updates to this day of new cars constantly being added, things being rotated in and out, new tracks being added, different events. I mean, it is, for lack of a better term, if it's not a games as a service, which I'd argue that it is, it's the closest thing Sony has to one.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Does Microsoft really have anything else that falls under games as a service? Sea of Thieves is kind of like the go-to one for me. It's
Forza? Is that considered a game?
I don't know,
service?
honestly. I don't know.
See,
I don't know how much it really adds that constantly. That's not a DLC. Because, like, if you think about it this way, the reason I bring up Warframe and Sea of Thieves is you never pay for those. They're not paid DLCs. They're games as a service. They're like No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
Like, if No Man's Sky would have actually been a PlayStation exclusive 100%, then that would be the game that you'd say Sony had exclusively as a games as a service. But it's not. So,
I guess Godfall
will be. That's a good point.
Yeah. I forgot about Godfall.
Well, we assume from the way they're talking about it and what we've seen.
Yeah. I hope that game's good.
I do too. But I also am curious because they keep talking about the way it is, and it's like they talk about it as almost like the way that they try and talk about Borderlands, where it's like, oh, it's this. But it's like, okay, but is it going to be more than that? And again, this is a new team making a games as a service, Destiny style looter shooter.
Well, so I don't know.
Hacker slasher. Shooter.
I don't know if you've heard the news about Destiny 2, but they're going to start doing something coming up in this next season, September, called Sunsetting. And essentially, you have a weapon, and if it is a season old, it cannot go past a certain power level. So when the new season comes out, Mountaintop, Recluse, all those weapons we all grinded for, you can still have and use them, like in PvP, but you cannot upgrade them past a certain point. Destiny 1 did that, and a lot of people don't remember that, but they did not do the pinnacle stuff that you had to do to grind and get all those weapons.
Dude, From knowing
So-
everybody I know who had to suffer through getting Mountaintop.
Yep, me too.
You know how crazy pissed I would be.
So here's
I'm glad I never wasted my time on that.
here's what me and Joe were talking about. That if they're gonna sunset these weapons because they know that the community loves all these weapons like Mountaintop and Recluse, if they're gonna sunset them, you would think they would have good substitutions to do so.
Maybe.
If they don't, me and Joe have already talked about looking for a new multiplayer game to play. So Godfall better be good.
So
we joked about going back to Minecraft.
You know what
I'm totally for that.
You know what they're gonna do?
Huh?
They're gonna do it like McDonald's does with the McRib.
They're gonna bring them back.
They're gonna come back for small periods of time where you can use them, and then they're gonna get sunsetted again.
Well, I love the McRibs though. Take off the onions. Take the onions off. Get extra pickles.
You know, I've actually literally never had a McRib ever.
Do you like McDonald's barbecue sauce? Like the little the ones you dip your nuggets in?
I don't care for barbecue sauce for nuggets.
Oh, I guess
so
I
wouldn't
guess you're
know.
right.
I've had theirs, but it's been 10 years. McDonald's chicken nuggets are with ketchup. That's all I need.
I had McDonald's DoorDash yesterday, actually. No, I didn't. I had DoorDash Friday.
I eat McDonald's nuggets here because Jonathan hooks me up with the straight up McDonald's nuggets I have in my fridge, and they're not.
I just really.
This isn't me saying that there are ones that are like it. No, these are McDonald's nuggets.
I just wanted a double quarter pounder meal. That's like one of the best fast food sandwiches. Anyways,
getting back on to what we're talking about. Next thing up is PlayStation are following their lead from the start of last gen by embracing indies, which is good because we talked about how they kind of fell off from it and now they're back. But there's their new initiative that's headed by Shuhei Yoshida called simply PlayStation Indies. We got to see our first set of games coming from this initiative this past week with 9 games, some new, some being reintroduced, coming to PS4 and a few coming to PS5 as well. Go check those out if you're interested in them. I don't want to spend time talking about all of them. They all had their own things that looked unique about them, but for me in particular, I think the 3 that really stand out to me is Haven, which is brought to you by the team that made Fury, the little boss, what do they call those?
Boss Rush
games.
Game's good.
That game is very good. So it's that team, but they're doing something way different. They're doing a non-traditional co-op RPG, and it's part of what I like that's interesting about it is it kind of looks like Flower and Journey, and that the just general exploration is supposed to be calming and relaxing, but there will be battling, but there's going to be pretty much no HUD. No health. It's going to do a thing where you see your player's energy change colors, and it's going to be colorblind friendly. UI is going to be really minimalized. You're going to have gear, but it's not going to be crazy. So it's kind of like making an RPG, but making it everything that you wouldn't expect in a modern RPG. And I love reading the article that was talking about it because the developer was like, I didn't want to make another game like Fury because Fury, making that type of game is really draining. He's like, making a game like this is very different. And he mentioned that he used to play Flower in between other games as kind of a palate cleanser, which I thought was a cool idea. And it was cool because like he talked about one of the things I hated about Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Do you remember how like there's just so much stuff to do and your map is just crazy punctuated with a list of stuff that you're supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
This game instead doesn't have a map, doesn't sit there and show you exactly what you're supposed to be doing. The way it goes about giving you this information is very indirect and kind of like as you explore, you're going to see more and more of it. But it gives you Journey, Flower, and even a little bit of
that looks like Cat from Gravity Rush.
Yeah, it does. I like the art style for it.
Especially like when they start taking flight here in a second. I was like, that
Yeah. Does that not also make you think of that Voidheart game or whatever that they're doing? I'm skipping on the name right now. The spiritual successor to
yeah, I can't think what it's called either.
Voidwalker? Something
No,
like that?
I don't think so. Hyperlight Drifter spiritual successor. Successor. Crap, I can't think what it's called.
It looks really good either way. And this reminds me of that as well.
No, you said co-op. Is this local co-op or online co-op?
Both is
Both,
what it seems
okay.
like. And it's drop in, drop out.
Cool.
So, yeah, really interesting idea. And the last one, or the next two, is Recompile, which is simply just a hacking-themed action platformer that just looks really cool. And I think as long as it's priced well, it'll be a game I'd really enjoy. I think the art style looks dope. And then the last one is Fist, that capital F-I-S-T. I know it stands for something. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. But it's that diesel punk animals kind of being fused with machinery.
Yeah.
It's a Metroidvania, and it was originally shown last year as part of the China Hero project, but we didn't get to see much of it. It was kind of just like a weird teaser trailer where you saw the rabbit with the big like steampunk arm, which they're calling it diesel punk. But Saul typed in fist on Google with no punctuation anywhere, and it was just fist. But the game looks really cool, and I like the idea of doing like a really graphically intense Metroidvania that's being done in Unreal Engine 4. But it's just crazy good looking. It has really detailed the combo. Actually, dude, some of the fighting reminds me of Fury. It's very fast paced. But I like it still keeping the 2.5D viewpoint where it's 3D renders on a 2D platform on a 2D basis.
It does look pretty cool.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens when all those come out, and I'm excited. I like that Sony's doing this. It's good for them to highlight this stuff. It's paid crazy dividends to Nintendo for them focusing on indies and making sure they put these games out there. And Sony's been doing it in weird ways the past few days, but this is probably the coolest thing they've done in a while. All right, 2 more things, and then we're going to round the show out. Far Cry 6 seems to be on the verge of being announced during Ubisoft's Forward Digital Showcase on July 12th, which is a Sunday. So check that out. Rumors have been running for months with Jason Schreier letting the proverbial cat out of the bag, but started back up with actor Giancarlo Esposito, which many of you will very likely know as most notably Gus from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, but also he was recently a character in The Mandalorian. He's a fantastic actor, really good. Also, he appears in the movie for the next week's episode that we're doing for the podcast, Do the Right Thing, as a much younger character. And when I finally realized it was him when I was watching the movie, kind of blew my mind. But
is that the one where he's putting on the shoes?
No.
Okay.
No. But he was much younger. It's the 1989 movie.
That's the one I thought it was. He's not sitting on a stoop putting on shoes?
No. But I mean, clearly he was already a big actor by then. Or he was already an actor by then.
Yeah. Great actor.
Fantastic. So good. Anyway, he claimed that he's been working on a huge video game that he cannot talk about yet, but Games Reactor UK, who have since deleted the article, claimed that the actor will be starring in Far Cry 6. Now, I know this is technically
sounds like some sketchy stuff there.
I know. Here's the thing. I totally believe the possibility of this. Not that it is it, but I believe the possibility.
This will be the biggest celebrity they would have ever gotten for Far Cry. Right?
Yeah. I mean, Troy Baker in retrospect is really huge now, and he was Far Cry 4 Pagan Min, but he wasn't actually. He was just the voice. He wasn't actually modeled after.
Yeah.
I have a strong feeling that if they're going to get Giancarlo Esposito, they're going to make the character look like him.
They're going to voice him too.
Well, yeah, of course, voice him. With that said, here's the thing: I don't want to typecast him too much, but he's such a good villain that I really want him to be the villain in this, because he's that multi-layered villain where sometimes you talk to him and look at him, you're like, he's an all right guy. And then the next moment you're like, oh, he's a monster.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at that, it'd be really cool. And my hope would actually be that they're returning. I don't know. I talk about Far Cry 5 a lot. Like, I enjoy the game, but the more I think back on it every time, I liked New Dawn more, and I like that they brought back some stuff from Far Cry 5 in it since it was a direct continuation. But Far Cry 5 it's like it always wanted to make a statement and got right up to where it could and then just doesn't.
It's one of those games that like you remember you played fondly and you're like, that had some fun gameplay. The story, looking back this long, I'm like, it was okay. Not worth playing again though. Yeah,
it's like you had a handful of interesting characters that you never actually did anything interesting with.
Yeah.
I think the most interesting character was Faith, maybe, in terms of how they used her. Who knows? Either way, I'm really hoping. I still like Far Cry 5. I mean, I'm not.
Ubisoft, make a Far Cry game that's a horror game, you cowards.
Ooh.
Put you out with some crazy cult members out in the jungle, and then have it nighttime, and you're wandering around the jungle, and these crazy cult members are chasing you.
Oh, well, that's essentially Outlast 2.
Yes, but then you can hop on a paraglider.
But not the jungle, but
then you can hop on a paraglider and soar over them.
Either way, I think my big hope for Far Cry 6, and I know it's not going to happen because Far Cry 5 sold so well. I really personally want to see Far Cry go back. I know it needs to evolve for there need to be a sixth one, but I think that they need to find a line that feels more like original Far Cry while still deleting the things that seem less necessary. Like, I understand that having the towers that you climb is not something that I necessarily want to be in a new one. I look back at it fondly in the original ones. I don't want it in a new one.
Yeah,
that was a good deletion from 5, but one of the things I didn't like about 1, just to make a joke,
Oh, I guess that's true. I was like,
It was at the very beginning of the game, and then it was like, can you believe people used to do this? And the rest of the game, there's none. But
Thank goodness.
that was a good deletion from 5 and New Dawn. I thought that was cool. But what I didn't like is like the removal of how health worked and how being able to heal yourself worked and the dynamic things that made the game feel grounded in a way. And that even comes up in like The Last of Us 2. One of the coolest things from a gameplay mechanic style is I like that with the introduction of arrows. It'd be cool if they could find a way to do it with bullets too, and they probably could have, but I like that it's like the arrow makes you bleed, you have to pull it out, and you have to patch yourself. That's cool.
That's actually very cool. Like, I wish that...
And that does not exist in Far Cry anymore.
Wouldn't it be cool if the next Elder Scrolls game had that?
Boy, it'd be weird, but I'd be down for it. I'd be down for it for sure. Make a way more dynamic game. See, that's
like those mods, those Frostfall mods that you add in that you could die of hypothermia and stuff in Skyrim, and that's all really cool.
I actually could see them putting a survival mode in the next game.
I hope they would.
Where you can play the whole game with survival settings, but if you don't want it, you can turn it off.
I would love that.
But even then, that brings up exactly the point of what I'm kind of talking about with Far Cry is there's a balance between innovating games and doing something new and interesting that works within them, but also taking away too many things that remove what makes the series unique and fresh to itself. It's like I need them to come back with some of the things that I honestly, and I know that I'm in the minority here for sure, even though there's a big chunk of people who are Far Cry fans that love this. I would not care. I would really like if they brought back Far Cry 2's realism of guns being able to jam and needing to be cleaned. And I thought that Red Dead Redemption 2 actually did it. You had to clean your gun. I was like, that's smart because it's now you could make it better than Far Cry 2 where you can clean your guns often, and when you're doing stuff that way it doesn't just happen randomly. You can prevent it from happening, but if you do not actually choose to maintain your gun, then you're going to suffer those consequences. That's a cool idea, but instead they're doing this thing where they want Far Cry to become this RPG that is essentially Assassin's Creed Odyssey and every other game they're doing where you have graded RPG items. I don't think that's needed in a Far Cry game at all.
No, I don't either. It's getting further and further away in my interest with those games. So like, I really hope that 6 will be a change up for that.
Well, like I think our entire friend group, you liked 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love 2.
I did not like 3 because 3 gave me motion sickness.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
I did like 3. But I know me, you, Seth, Big Seth, probably Michael Dowdy at this point. I think we all absolutely love Far Cry 2. And I think there's nothing of Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 5 to me.
No.
Nothing
at all.
But I could see in Far Cry 3 and 4 and even something as crazily different as Far Cry Primal, all of those had things that were like, okay.
Far Cry 5 didn't even have the level editor, did it?
No.
I didn't think so.
But I don't think Far Cry 3 or 4 did either. The level editor
I thought
was really
3 was
cool.
in. I thought 3 had it.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I really don't know.
3 and PlayStation All-Stars are the only 2 games that have ever given me motion sickness.
That's weird. All-Stars. I can understand 3. They chalked up a lot of focus effect that would give you that. I don't see. And
it could have been the weird TV we were playing on, but they had a tournament at GameStop one night for midnight for some random game, and I got played it for like 10 seconds. I'm like, nope.
It might have been that TV that was sitting on the counter that was angled. That TV was a piece of crap.
It was a real big old TV.
I don't know.
The kind that had like the speaker system built into the base.
Yeah. All right. Last thing up here on the news, and then this is what we're going to round the show off with. And I think this is actually a pretty interesting thing to talk about. Of course, I think that this report proves that it's pretty much about as true as it can get, though there's always room for error in these things. So The Last of Us 2 continues to make news in interesting ways. This week we have reports that Sony reached out to one reviewer from Vice who, with a follow-up for his criticisms of the game. Sony's representative apparently told him, quote, "Some of the conclusions you reached in your review were unfair and dismissed some meaningful changes or improvements," end quote. Now, the reason I bring this up, and me and Blake were talking about this the other day, in an industry where publishers often reach out to reviewers for like legitimate factual inaccuracies about the game, which is fair. I think it's perfectly fine that if you have a game out there and it's like, hey, your review is 100%
incorrect,
factually wrong in this regard. I think that's fair. I think it's fine. If it's fair, it should be done. And the fact that does happen, and they do get fixed, and you don't normally hear anything about it. It's pretty weird to hear of a game company just essentially being like, hey, you reviewed our game, and we don't agree with your review. That's not your goal. That's not your job. Has nothing to do with you.
That representative should be fired if that was not done under direct order from Sony.
Yes, that's a big thing too. Now, one of the things that someone else had mentioned that they were looking up that makes this a little, and I didn't realize this, apparently Vice was one of the people that got into Naughty Dog for their labor mismanagement, that when they were going around over the crunch culture. They were involved in a big expose about it.
That?
People think it was either retaliation or it was so tone deaf and stupid that they don't realize that our Sony or whoever at least the representative was didn't realize that this comes off as a huge company flexing their muscles to kind of be like, don't mess with us.
See, and that's one reason why I like these big venues like GameSpot, IGN, all these other big websites, Game Informer, I can't trust their reviews because it's like you make a review and then you make a negative one and then now you got Sony muscling Vice into like, hey, you shouldn't have said that. So now people at Vice are freaking out like, oh no, they're not going to give us games anymore for free to review. We're going to have to delete that review or alter that review. And then sometimes it goes through with it and you never know. And it's hard to keep track. Like ACG on YouTube, I actually respect what he does.
Yeah.
Because I know that he won't technically get bought out. He's an independent person. And
I always love that he starts his review saying, even if I do get codes, I still buy the game.
And he gives it away for free for his patrons. He seems like he has a really good system that works. And I feel like that he can't be bought out. I feel like if anything, like if him or if Angry Joe, which I'm not a massive fan of Angry Joe at all, but he seems at least he is ethical in the way he reviews his games. He does not let somebody sway his opinions.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I like the completionist. He may not do dead on game reviews, but he reviews them in a way that is very different to look at. He reviews them in a sense of what this game did to me in the time it took me to 100% do everything in the game.
Yeah, which is a very different lens than most people.
Yes, it's refreshing. But like this,
it's more than platinum too, is what I love because that's even different because there's a lot of games you can platinum without 100%
and having all the collectibles or whatever. Yeah. And he goes through and does everything. This is wrong. I think that if someone does or has an opinion of any kind, whether it's written, verbal, anything, you can disagree with it all you want. You can say, I don't like that opinion. That's not my opinion. Yeah. You could feel the need to change it. It'll make you a dickhead, or not even a dickhead, but if you feel like that person shouldn't have that opinion, you can have that opinion. I don't care, but that's not a way to look at life of like, I don't like that opinion. They shouldn't have it.
Oh, yeah.
I could see how people could feel so strongly about something. I don't feel like you should do that, though, or say that. But at the same time, it's like, this is inherently a wrong and unethical. You don't reach out to somebody to change a review for this kind of reason. I could get, if you love the game, and you say, hey, I don't really agree with that review. Somebody could say to me, I don't agree with your review of Spider-Man because it's 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
I think it's 8. Cool. The story issues, the pacing with that game really took off 3 points for me. That was it. That everything else of that game was done well. Yeah, but I didn't see those issues. Well, you had a different experience than I did, right? Yeah. That's why my review's a 7 and your review's a 10. That's a fine conversation, but saying, hey, you need to change that review from a 7 to a 10. There's no story pacing issues. You don't need to do that. Or you need to change that review from 7 to 10. Your review is wrong. We don't agree with it.
Yeah.
That's should never be said. And a company knows better than that. That's why I think it's the rep.
Well, and that's the thing is like, right, as much as I disagree with this across the board, I don't necessarily agree with even an individual user going on Twitter and being like, hey, I read your review and I think it dismisses some things and you need to change your review to 7 to 10. Well, just as much as that's crappy and terrible, it's an individual person and it's way different than a corporate company that's reaching out that is the entity behind the game.
Yeah.
It's so... I don't really know. Here's the thing. I love the game. I love Sony, right? I think clearly this is a moment where I've read the review from Vice. I read it early on, and before I played it, because Saul and I were having multiple conversations about where the game stands, and because I did happen to know a little bit of the leaks, it was like a reading things and just seeing where people stood. And I talked with Saul about it.
They didn't even give it a bad review either.
No, it wasn't a bad review.
It's almost to what I would think that I would say about the game in a way.
Yeah, I think in reading the review, I think the review is a good review for the game, but it's not a glowing review for the game. And that kind of is the problem in the setup of it looks like it needs to... the optics that come from this is that Sony thinks this game, it demands every bit of it being 100% glowing reviews.
Yeah.
You're never going to get that. And that's what makes
And
it
this
feel
certainly ain't
even
the way
more
to do it.
Yeah, and that's what makes it feel even more like they're coming after them for the expose on Naughty Dog's
This is a story that I
labor
think
problems.
will develop well with time. I think that if we see Vice come out and say that, hey, they did it again, or because Vice is one of those companies that they do not care. They are the ones, like, there's a lot of documentaries that they make and stuff. They don't care about who that offends.
Yeah, I don't really know much about Vice.
So Vice, I bet you $1 million.
I know who they are, but I don't know a lot about them. I don't follow the site a lot. And that's why I thought the tidbit of information about them being the site that was behind the labor mismanagement from Naughty Dog was an interesting add-in, because then at that point it's like, okay, well, there may have been a personal reason as to why specifically Vice was called out when there are other reviews that are not 100% glowing of the game.
Yeah, and Vice, what I mean by what I was saying, though, is like this company is not scared at all to do dark things or things that like for example, they have a documentary series on YouTube. There's hundreds of these, maybe not hundreds, there's tons of them. There's The World's Scariest Drug, Life Inside of One of Mexico's Deadliest Towns, The Cannibal Warlords of Liberia. There's so much that they are just not scared to put out there that other people might be scared to do, or they might be worried about it. The KKK versus the Crips versus Memphis City Council. They don't care at all about, like, they're going to educate you no matter what. They're not going to change their review for this. If we do, we know for sure that Sony did something. I doubt we're going to see that.
I don't think we'll see anything coming either. I guess the thing here is that in general, it's a gross thing, and I can like the game and I can like the company that put the game out, both Naughty Dog and PlayStation, and I can also talk about how just gross this behavior is. Which I can also talk about how gross the behavior is of people who are messaging Laura Bailey and telling her they're going to kill her children and all sorts of crazy stuff.
You're a garbage person for like making threats like that to people just because the game isn't as what you thought it would be.
It just shows that this game is probably across this entire generation. I think this may be the most divisive game. I think the only one that maybe comes close to it was all the fuss that happened. I don't mean fuss in a negative way, even though I don't agree with whatever. The Hatred game that came out years ago.
That wasn't this generation, though.
Yeah, it was.
No, that had to have been last gen.
No, Hatred was this generation, 2015 or so.
No.
Yeah, look. 2015, June 1st.
I remember that game being like 2010.
No, this game had people furious because it's not even a reason. You're just a messed up dude running around killing people. And you think about games like Postal and stuff that have existed for a long time here. You think about games like Postal that have existed for a long time, and there are other games that skirt on this, but this game got a lot more because it was like a small group of people doing it. Look, it's fine. I think the game is a little excessive myself. I think that they have every right to make it and put it out, just like I think that Steam has every right to tell them that they don't want to sell it or whatever it is. I think that you have that going on, but this may be the most divisive game, at least in loud media. I think Anthem has its moments of being just a mess in a lot of ways, and I know Man's Sky had some mess to it.
I think the biggest, honestly,
I don't think anything's been just as clearly divisive as this has, at least in how it's blown up on social media.
I think honestly the biggest mess award this generation goes to Anthem, probably.
Yeah, as a total mess, and that's a game again that I love. But every time I hear somebody talking down on it, I'm like, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I do love a lot about the game, but you're right in a lot of ways. It's like, it's weird. It's just how it is. But, one of the other ones that I can really think of that stirred a lot of trouble up, though, in the back and forth, the Order 1886. It's interesting that Sony has had a lot of them this gen. You know what?
We just stumbled into the perfect community take for next week. What is your most divisive game of this generation?
Oh,
that's a good one.
That's a good one because I have to imagine there's games that I just somehow have missed, and didn't even see any of the back and forth on it. But yeah, even if it's personal, not necessarily what it is for you. What do you think has been the most divisive game of this generation?
Yeah, and hey, don't forget, if you like the video, give us a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, that's cool too. Hit the thumbs down. Tell us why you dislike it. You can find us every Monday in video form on YouTube at 10 a.m. Pacific time, noon Central time. And of course, you can find us across all podcast services. If you use a podcast service and you don't see us on there, let us know. We'll get on there. And if you use a podcast service that you could review us on, hit us with a review. Tell us how you really feel about the podcast and what we could do to improve it and let you know that we're doing a good job. We would like to take a second and thank all of our people who love us, all of our friends and our family who watch the show and who watched our show since we've come out, and new people alike who have joined in, like glorious people like the Snow Jedi.
Yes.
Wonderful dude.
Yeah, we gained 4 patrons last month, so
yes.
Thank you.
We love all of you.
But before we go too far, because we always end up forgetting, or you try and segue right into patrons.
Well,
if you want to go and chime in on the community's take segments.
For like the last 3 weeks, I've been trying to get to that, but then you cut me off and you're like, before you forget.
Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, you can find our community's take on our Facebook group titled Triangle Squared, a PlayStation Podcast, as well as our Twitter, which is Triangle SQRD, and our Discord group, which you can find links to on both our Facebook and our Twitter, and in the YouTube description as well.
Actually, speaking of YouTube, if you want to, I definitely will. I'll get the notifications. If you want to do your community's take in the YouTube comments, feel free to do so.
We could do that too. But yeah, if you liked us, share us, please. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I'll let Brett leave us off with a live read. Not many people know that until like a couple weeks ago, but yes, Brett does.
And actually, I'm gonna go ahead and say I forgot to update the thing, so I'm gonna shout out the new patrons. They just won't be posted on the picture just yet. I'll fix that.
Yes, every week though he will shout them out lively, which is a fun word to say. But
lively.
take us home to those old country roads and let them know of our few new Patreons that we didn't get a chance to add to the board yet.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Oh
no. It's still recording.
Okay, cool. Well, here's our live read-off. Proof is in the pudding. Thanks to our patrons, Josh Durrell, Matthew Green, My Name is Dan, Luke Bartolomeo, Sean Santarud, Funk Turkey, Danny Villalobos, Corey Hickerson, Blake Popst, Kevin Bacon Bits, Shadowist, Steven Salazar, The Stonard, Travis Blow, Eduardo Palomino, Stefan Swanland, Constantly Kenny, Solitary Red, Chris Figs, Brian, Donovan Williams, William Digital Spooker, Derek Porter, Josh Ayers, Brandon Edwards, Sean 1 Neo, Tyler Powers, El Chabib, Jason Clendenning, Zachary Sawyer, and Ali Valiant. If you would like to become a patron, head over to patreon.com/Nartech and consider giving us as little as $1 a month. Thank you so much.
Thank you.